After Trump was elected president, I received a couple of communications from people. One via phone, well, text, and the other one via Twitter, X, direct message. People asking me, "Hey, now that Trump's back in office, is the economy going to get better?" And I said, "Yeah, in some ways it definitely will. Obviously, I mean, just Trump's presence alone will have a dramatic impact on the economy, and it will take things to the next level." But with that said, the threats still remain. Trump, Harris, didn't matter. They're still pushing, they being the powers that be, are still pushing for central bank digital currencies. They're still pushing for de-dollarization and the rise of BRICS. They're still pushing for the advancement of a worldwide economy. And while Trump will do everything in his power to prevent that, to at least slow it down, some of it is not within even the power of the United States of America itself. And this is why there is no reason, you can see by the gold prices, there is no reason to doubt physical precious metals as a proper way to hedge against what is coming, because it's still coming. You know, there were certain scenarios that would have happened if Kamala Harris had won, and there are certain scenarios that will happen now that President Trump has won, and those scenarios still point in the same exact direction. That's the reason why even central banks are still buying up as much gold and silver as possible. That's why banks, financial institutions are recommending to their people, buy as much gold and silver as possible. I work with a faith-driven gold company. There are a lot of gold companies out there that get recommended by hosts. The one that I like happens to be driven by faith, and they actually do a tremendous job versus the competition. You can check out Genesis Gold Group by going to rumblegold.com. That's rumblegold.com, or read my testimony over at jdrucker.com/gold. You're listening to the JD Rucker Show. Let's begin. I don't think there's any Republican politician that I've been more critical of over the years than Mitch McConnell. He is completely compromised, even if we disregard the mental acuity challenges that he's had for a few years now, even if we just look at his policies, if we just look at his actions, at the way that he's handled his position, whether as Senate Minority Leader or Senate Majority Leader. The guy is weak at best. Sometimes he is truly anti-American in the way that he wields his power, not just his power of office, but perhaps more importantly, his power over the elections themselves, his power over the money that is spent through PACs, his very powerful senatorial PACs. That alone is enough to absolutely despise the man. He's bad as it gets. Especially as bad as it gets on the Republican side. He is the representative of the UniParty Swamp. With that said, if I was forced to choose between Mitch McConnell or John Thune for Senate Majority Leader, I would take Mitch McConnell every day of the week and twice on Tuesdays. John Thune is that bad. John Thune is arguably the guy that's been behind McConnell, driving McConnell for a long time now. Anytime you see Mitch have a glitch, the person that steps up is generally John Thune. He's the one that is always standing behind McConnell. He's always there to hop in and push McConnell aside. If McConnell starts having one of his episodes, Thune is there. Some would argue that Thune has been controlling McConnell for a long time. McConnell is supposed to be his mentor, but I believe that Thune has actually sort of taken control of that, which is why it makes sense, not from a logical perspective, but at least from a political perspective, why Thune is currently in the driver's seat to be the next Senate Majority Leader. We cannot let that happen. Unfortunately, we don't have the power to say no. This is not like a regular vote, the Senate Majority Leader, which is generally a made-up position anyway, one that's not in the Constitution at all, but still wields power because of the Senate rules. The Senate Majority Leader determines so much that happens in the Senate. And it's unfortunate, but we have to deal with it. As a result of these Senate rules, though, the vote, which is done strictly by the party itself, senators within the party, so we don't have a say. It is a secret vote. We cannot know who's voting for who, except that we can this time, at least reportedly. I can't verify this for sure, but we do have what appears to be an accurate list of the votes, an accurate list of the initial. It's the whip list. Okay, John Thune happens to be the current Senate Republican whip, and he has been out there. For those who aren't familiar, the whip is supposed to go out there and whip the vote, as they say. The whip is supposed to be there to see what is the temperature before we actually take a vote to the floor or in chambers. What are people actually going to vote for? What are his fellow senators going to say? And currently, it's between him and John Cornyn, the Texas Senator Rhino, and Rick Scott. I want to say something really quick about Rick Scott because I'm going to be very complimentary of him going forward. He is the person that I would like to see between the three candidates. I would love to see Rick Scott as the Senate Majority Leader when considering that it's him or Cornyn or Thune. Now, in reality, let me, again, getting this out of the way, Rick Scott is mid. I mean, he's meh. Yeah, he's okay. He has some conservative votes on his record. That's great. He is a supporter, a fan, an ally of Donald Trump, and that's the reason that I would support him, is because if we are going to get Agenda 47 to work, we're going to need somebody like Rick Scott in charge of the Senate. So that's why my support goes out to him. But I want to be clear. I see a lot of people out there sort of harassing him and harassing those who are supporting him based upon his certain aspects of his record. In particular, his support of red flag gun laws. Look, that's a big deal. I obviously do not support red flag gun laws. Rick Scott does. But here's the thing. If you want to primary somebody, okay, if you want to get somebody in there that has a better Second Amendment record, great. But considering the options, I have to still go with Scott. But even if, let's say that my primary objective here isn't Agenda 47. Let's say all I care about is the Second Amendment, okay? Or perhaps this is you. Even if Rick Scott is the Senate Majority Leader, for him to get nationwide red flag gun laws in place, number one, he would have to get agreement from the House, which won't happen. Number two, he would have to get his fellow Republicans, at least nearly all of them, well, maybe at least half of them, we'll say, to sign on. But then he'd have to get the president to sign it, and that's not going to happen. So the chances of red flag gun laws being pushed by Rick Scott and becoming law nationwide are essentially nil. There is no chance. So do I disagree with him on that and several other issues? You betcha. But I'm looking at this from not, is he the best senator perspective? I'm looking at it as, is he the best person, given the three choices that we have, is he the best person to lead the Senate? And the answer is yes. Unfortunate. I mean, I can name 4, 5, 6, 8, maybe, just among senators. 8 senators that I would rather see ahead of him. Probably 10 at least. I don't think that Rick Scott would make the top 10. But John Thune would be at the very bottom of the list, and John Cornyn would be close to the bottom of the list. There's actually probably a couple of Democrats that I would rather see in place other than John Thune, because he does represent, more so than the UniParty Swamp, he is as close to both the deep state and the globalist elite cabal as any Republican member of the Senate. I mean, he is, again, in my humble opinion, far worse than even Mitch McConnell. I'm going to pull up the list here, the list of the reported votes, the whip list. But before I do, I want to do a quick shout out to my amazing company. Something that I'm very proud of. Something that we are. We were on the verge of having to to raise prices. And the deciding factor was whether or not Donald Trump or Kamala Harris won the election. Well, obviously, praise God, Donald Trump won the election. So we're not going to be raising prices. And to celebrate, we are going to have our continued sale, the biggest sale we've ever had, over at worldviewbeef.com. Just go to worldviewbeef.com and use promo code JDR, and you'll be able to get 35% off for a very limited time. Stock up on high quality beef. It's not just beef, it's steaks. We're talking about ribeye, New York strip, tenderloin, sirloin, the good stuff. This isn't beef crumbles. It's not beef chunks. It's not what you generally get from survival stores. This does have a 25-year shelf life. No need to refrigerate. Just keep it on your shelf if you can. You might not be able to. You might say, that stuff's good. We gave it a try. I like it. You know what? Go ahead and bust open one more bag. We'll just reorder it again next week from worldviewbeef.com. Hopefully Rucker will still have his promo code JDR working for 35% off. So check that out. All right, let's take a look at this list. This is, this is supposed to be the whip list. This is the list of House senators are supposedly going to be voting, at least based upon the weekend survey from the whip, from John Thune himself. And this came, I forgot, I actually don't know who it came from, who the original source was, but it's been circulating around for a bit now and taking different forms. People have listed it in different ways. Some have added phone numbers for the offices, but this is, I think, could be, maybe not. Actually, I don't think it is. I don't think this is the original, but it's all the data is the same. Okay. In this particular case, it looks like they divided it up very nicely into who's voting for who. So you've got, looks like, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. 11 allegedly voting for Rick Scott, Rand Paul, J.D. Vance, who doesn't get a vote. I don't think he gets a vote. Tommy Tuberville, Bill Hagerty, Eric Schmidt, Roger Marshall, Rick Scott, of course, Mike Lee, Bernie Moreno, the new guy on the block, Ron Johnson, and Marco Rubio. And at least Rubio, Johnson, let's see. I don't know if Paul has come out. Hagerty did. And Mike Lee has been very adamant about it. So at least 4 of them, we do know that it's confirmed that they have come out and said this. Now, if this list, again, let's be clear, if this list is made up, then it's a very good makeup. Like, somebody put a lot of thought into this, because nothing stood out as like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that one. You know, maybe for some people it would have, but like, for example, you've got Dave McCormick, the new senator, recently elected in Pennsylvania, coming out for John Cornyn, allegedly. And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you know, he was supported by MAGA. Look, guys, Dave McCormick from the beginning has been, again, he's a rhino. He really is. Okay, he always has been. He was a rhino the first time he ran, got beat by Mehmet Oz, Dr. Mehmet Oz, who's also a rhino. Don't want to go down that road anymore, but so that doesn't surprise me. These are all people that are allegedly supporting Cornyn. You got Josh Hawley. That's sort of a surprise, I guess. Yeah, I like Josh Hawley, but it's not like, I mean, he's a good Christian guy, but he's not exactly like super mega, you know, anti-establishment. He's sort of establishment. John Kennedy, look, the guy is very entertaining, but again, he's not exactly super ultra MAGA. Langford, Rhino, Reish, Rhino, Pete Ricketts, big time Rhino, of course, McCormick, Cindy Hyde-Smith, Chuck Grassley, Deb Fisher, Joni Ernst, Rhino, Mike Crapo, John Thune, which people were like, oh my gosh, this couldn't be real because you got John Thune there. You know, why would he vote for Cornyn? He's listed as voting for Cornyn because he wants to stir up, in my humble opinion, if this list is correct. And if anything, the fact that they have the whip list shows shows Thune backing Cornyn, it's sort of like, oh my gosh, it's a closer race than we thought. We better get behind Thune because he's the one that's winning. I could see a guy like John Thune doing that, pretending like he's going to be voting for Cornyn for whatever reason, multiple possible reasons. But don't forget, this is the whip list. In other words, this is his list. He's the one that compiled this, if it is what it claims to be. Ted Budd, I guess, is sort of a surprise. I mean, that's a bit of a surprise, I will admit. Katie Britt, nothing there. Boozman, Graham. The only surprise about Graham is that he didn't go for Thune, at least to me. Tim Scott, sort of a surprise, only because I thought he would have gone for Cornyn, not Thune. Sheehy, again, another new allegedly MAGA guy. I've been milquetoast lukewarm on Sheehy from the beginning. I think that he is a full-blown rhino, a neocon rhino, to be specific, but he won, and Trump endorsed him. I did not like him in the primary, but he won, so I withheld my criticism of him. Sullivan, Rounds, and again, these are people that are allegedly voting for Thune. Rounds, Tillis, Sullivan, Banks. That's a bit of a surprise, I guess. Jim Justice, brand new, another new newbie in there. Mark Wayne Mullen, no surprise there. McConnell, of course. Loomis, Wicker. Let's see, anybody with Ted Cruz. So a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, Ted Cruz. Why would he be on that list? Ted, again, let's not forget, this is supposed to be a secret vote. And there is an advantage, especially for longtime senators, anybody that's been there for 2 terms or longer. There is an advantage to back the winning horse. And if they think that Thune's going to win, then it's politically expedient for them to back him. Now, for other people, such as, for example, like let's see, Susan Collins is just like, who's going to be more rhino-ish? Lisa Murkowski, who's going to be more rhino-ish? Marsha Blackburn, Tom Cotton, Ted Cruz. These are all people that assumed that the vote would be secret, that their name wouldn't come out, and therefore they are trying to back the winning horse so that they can get better assignments, maybe get some tag team action going, maybe throw their name in the hat for other leadership positions. It makes political sense, unfortunately, to back Thune. And that's one of the reasons why I do believe that Cornyn isn't technically even really running. I think that Cornyn was thrown out there so that there's an alternative to Thune who could then eventually back Thune. That's what I think is going to end up happening, versus having Thune out there, and if he has less than 50%, there's only one other competitor, one other opponent. Maybe some people will think, well, maybe I can throw my weight behind them, and that'll be enough. By throwing Cornyn in the mix, kind of splits the votes up 3 ways, and then gives Thune an opportunity to then whip everybody into shape, get them behind him. It's all very ugly, devious. The House is bad enough. The Senate is a cesspool, especially with their rules. They're supposed the upper chamber is supposed to be about decorum, and decorum has been is only wielded when they want to try to stifle anybody who's getting out of line. That's it. There is no real decorum in the Senate. These are, generally speaking, either evil people or they're compromised, bullied, blackmailed, bribed, whatever. Almost all of them. You can name on one hand the number of senators who aren't compromised. And that's me smoking the hopium, sort of, because there's a good chance that almost all of them are. If I had to pick who's not, it would amongst the senators, it would be Rand Paul and, Tommy Tuberville's probably, so I'd have to pick 3. Rand Paul, Tommy Tuberville, and Ron Johnson. I think that the others have certain degrees of compromise. They are somewhat controlled. And again, for all I know, maybe they're all controlled. Maybe I'm just kind of latching on to hope that there's at least some integrity in the U.S. Senate. But there will be no integrity, no chance for integrity in the Senate if John Thune, or for that matter, if John Cornyn, become the Senate majority leaders. It will be just as bad as Mitch McConnell, if not worse. Thune is both of them, Thune and Cornyn, are both huge backers of Ukraine. I mean, they have the military-industrial complex tattoos on their butts. I mean, they are owned completely and totally, as well as from Big Pharma, as well as, one could argue, Ukraine, the Chinese Communist Party, possibly some other foreign interests, but here domestically at the very least. These are the worst of the worst when it comes to being compromised by business interests, by even political interests to some extent. It's untenable. And if our intention, and it should be our intention, if our goal, if our desire as Americans, patriots, as MAGA patriots, if our desire is to see this nation flourish, is to see us thrive, then we will need the Senate to be able to promote Agenda 47. This isn't just about Trump, folks. This is about making sure that Trump's agenda makes it through. Having Trump fighting against the Senate, fighting against the House, that's not going to do us any good. He's already going to probably have to fight one or both in the second half of his term. We only really get 2 years, as is generally the case. I mean, if you look back at all the presidencies for the last 8, okay, the ruling party gets in for 2 years, and that's about it. They have the presidency, the House, and the Senate for 2 years, and then they lose the House or the Senate or both. That's been the way that it's been since, I think Clinton was the last one that had, no, not even Clinton. Gosh, you'd have to go back to George W. Bush. George H.W. Bush. Otherwise, see, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, and now Trump again, all having control in the first part of their first term, and that's it. In this case, of course, it's Trump's second term, but you know what I mean. We got 2 years to get Agenda 47 in place, and that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen as easily. I'm not saying all is lost. Oh, if we get John Thune, all is lost. No, a good chunk will definitely be lost. But we can salvage it. We'll see. I don't know. I was hoping to just do a rah-rah segment for Rick Scott, but I just can't. I mean, again, I'm not that passionate about him. I am far more passionate against John Thune, against John Cornyn, than I am in favor of Rick Scott, but I'll take him. Look, he will do 95% of what we want him to do. So let's get him instead of Thune, who would do 10%, and Cornyn, who might do 15 to 20%. And I say, let's get them as if we have any control. We don't. Secret ballot, just the senators, just the GOP senators, which means that our only recourse is to pressure them. That means hopping on the phone, means sending emails, hopping on social media, particularly X, and letting them know how you feel. Now, thankfully, there has been an uprising. I mean, it really has been. I have not seen this strong of a response from MAGA influencers, unified pretty much, backing behind Rick Scott. Got Elon Musk, Dan Bongino, the aforementioned senators that have come out publicly. Notice that nobody's coming out publicly in favor of Thune. I think Tom Cotton did. Tom Cotton might have been the only one. But nobody's coming out publicly, really. None of the senators are coming out publicly behind the other two. It's only the ones that are backing Rick Scott that are coming out publicly. That should tell you something. Let's take a quick break. When we get back, I think, I'm good. I'm done. I'm done with this one. We'll move on to the next story.
A large retail store just canceled a huge order, leaving us with a ton of extra MyPillows. But you know what? That's their loss. I'm going to make it your gain. For the first time ever, you get standard classic MyPillows for wholesale prices, only $14.88. I can't believe I'm even saying that. Only $14.88. But it gets even better. For a limited time, I'm going to offer my entire classic collection at wholesale prices. Upgrade to a queen-size MyPillow for just $18.88. King size, only $1 more. Get my body pillows for $29.88 and multi-use My Pillows for only $9.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on the screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of wholesale pricing for the first time ever on TV, including my standard size My Pillow, only $14.88. They've never been offered this low before. We have limited quantities at this price, so limit's going to be 10, and once they're gone, they're gone.
Whether you've been a prepper for a long time, or maybe you're just getting started, looking around and thinking how crazy it is, we usually cover the basics. You get your food, you get your water, you get your ammunition. Don't forget your ammo. You get your battery chargers, solar battery chargers, or whatever. But a lot of times I think people will forget their meds. Okay, whether it's chronic meds, antibiotics, I think a lot of people don't even realize that you can stock up on that stuff. They go to the doctor, they go to the pharmacy, and the pharmacist said, oh, here's your 2-month supply or whatever. Well, you can actually stock up on a lot of these meds by going to jdrucker.com/meds. You'll talk to the good folks over at Jace Medical. They can get you a 12-month supply of certain prescription drugs. They can get you emergency meds, all sorts of good stuff, things that you may or may not need, but it's always good to have it on hand because I guarantee you, even if you don't think you need it today, you might need it in the future. jdrucker.com/meds. All right, so I hate to get ahead of myself, but I'm going to get way ahead of myself on this one, but I think it's an important topic. Now that we have the election secured, there's still some House elections we still have to technically win. I think that we're going to, but Republicans still have to technically win control of the House of Representatives, so there's still some votes there to watch. We still have Arizona, which I am not giving up on Kerry Lake just yet. I do believe that we witnessed massive widespread voter fraud. We'll likely talk about that later in the show. We'll see. We'll see. But I do want to jump ahead to 2028. I know it's early, but is it really early? Is it too early to start talking about a JD Vance presidential run? I don't think it is. I think that we need to do it for multiple reasons. Number one, I think that if we can solidify support behind JD Vance, and you might have somebody else in mind, so you might be like, no, Rucker, I'm not going down that road. You might have I don't know, whoever you want, but I think that Vance has proven that he's special, proven that he can be a true, legitimate continuation of the Trump policies, assuming that the next 4 years are successful for Donald Trump, for America, then we're going to need somebody like a JD Vance to continue that. And I can't think of anybody, at least as of now, who would be a better fit because he's been around Trump for a while. He's aligned his ideology, his worldview, his philosophies around the MAGA movement and around Trump's Agenda 47. So can Agenda 48 not be exactly what we're seeing, except an extension of it? I think it can, which is why early on, before he's even inaugurated or I guess he's not inaugurated, but before Trump is even inaugurated, before Vance is officially the vice president, I am going to pre-endorse him. So that means we have to get ready. That means we have to start thinking along the lines of campaigning. And there's a few reasons for this. Number one, the biggest reason is because I want to minimize the opposition. I want him to be a de facto candidate in many ways. There was opposition to, for example, George H.W. Bush following Reagan's successful years, but it wasn't much. I mean, there wasn't a ton of competition. He was, again, the de facto nominee, and he did get some pretty harsh pushback, I guess. But I'm hoping to avoid that with JD Vance. I think that he can and will do a great job. There was an article over at Granite Grok over the weekend. JD Vance has 4 years to be ready. First part of the job is done. America elected Donald Trump as the 47th president, completing the most incredible political comeback ever. After multiple impeachments, indictments, and assassination attempts, Donald Trump not only rose from the Washington scrapyard, but delivered a mandate given to him by the American voters. At this time, it looks like a trifecta win for the Republicans, or for Trump, as the Republicans have sent Chuck Schumer to the showers and are very close to securing the House. Trump's victory was a landslide of electoral votes, but he also won the popular vote, which has not happened in 20 years, despite all the rhetoric and fear-mongering from the radical left. American voters turned the map red except for the two progressive coasts. This is a win that denies questions. One of the finest decisions Trump made was selecting JD Vance as his running mate. The selection of the vice presidential candidate was especially important this time because Trump will only have 4 years before retiring from office. JD Vance is in political graduate school and must be ready to lead the ticket in 2028. He has shown since named to the ticket that he is the right person for the job. He has a remarkable rags to riches story, served in the Marines right out of high school, and graduated from Ohio State in 3 years before getting his law degree from Yale. That is a plethora of achievements for a man who just turned 40. JD Vance may be under the radar as a senator from Ohio, but he was front and center when he decimated Tim Walz in their debate. He is brilliant, has a complete grasp of the issues, is a great communicator, can think well on the fly, and is unflappable. Vance comes to the job with the perfect attitude. He knows his job is to do whatever President Trump needs, but he showed throughout the campaign that he not only says the right things, but is committed to every aspect of Trump's agenda. They are on the same page from day one. While typing this piece, Vance posted this perfect note on Truth Social. Thank you to my beautiful wife for making it possible to do this, to President Donald Trump for giving me such an opportunity to serve our country at this level, and to the American people for their trust. I will never stop fighting for all of you. So yes, I am throwing my early endorsement for 2028 right out there. Shortly after the 2024 election, I do want to see JD Vance as President of the United States, though not before 2029. January of 2029 is the earliest I want to see that, because for him to be it earlier would mean something bad happened, and God forbid. We are at the bottom of the hour. I have to take a 10-second break for station identification. So stay tuned. If you learned something from this clip, you can find this and the entirety of my shows over at jdrucker.com/shows. That's jdrucker.com/shows. Subscribe everywhere. Corporate media made a big deal about how Kamala Harris was getting so many celebrity endorsements. Now, we were laughing. You and I were laughing because we're like, who cares what Taylor Swift has to say? Who cares what any of these other people have to say, right? Because they're not exactly thought leaders. They're entertainers. It's like, why would we care? We had the thought leaders on our side. We had Elon Musk, one of the smartest men in the world. I mean, this is a dude that launches rockets, okay, and lands rockets. Not that he does it himself, but you know what I mean. We had Joe Rogan, who is, just by his sheer experience, has become a true thought leader in the world. People like Tucker Carlson. We had the right people on Team Trump. They had Taylor Swift and Eminem and people like that. Now they had some thought leaders, and one in particular who I thought was interesting because she does still have a whole lot of sway, and that's Oprah. Well, as it turned out, she didn't even have Oprah. She had to pay Oprah. You didn't see, I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't think I am, but you didn't see Donald Trump paying Elon Musk or paying Joe Rogan or paying any of these guys as far as I know. Maybe he did. Maybe it's part of the game. I don't know. But I'm sure if that is the case, then we'll find out. But as far as I know, Trump didn't have to pay for any of his endorsements. Kamala had to pay Oprah. That's ludicrous. Article over at The Gateway Pundit by the great Ben Koo. Kamala Harris paid Oprah $1 million to publicly endorse her, and voters were not impressed. They weren't. They weren't impressed by that. They even heard her town hall. I mean, there was a lot of negative press, not from corporate media. They were playing it up as if it was the greatest thing ever, but a lot of people on social media were like, wow, that's kind of weird. And they kind of locked into certain things that Kamala said. It really was, she didn't get the bang for her buck, that's for sure. According to the article, the Kamala Harris campaign for president paid off television and business mogul Oprah Winfrey in return for a public endorsement. According to a report from the Washington Examiner on how the campaign burned through $1 billion in funds, and they're now, of course, $20 million in debt, and Donald Trump's offered to pay that off. Trolling. Oprah Winfrey's Harpo Productions received $1 million in October for campaign-related services. In return for this investment, Winfrey hosted a star-studded town hall and spoke at her final rally in Philadelphia before Election Day. She told supporters, "We're voting for values and integrity and $1 million," except she didn't mention the $1 million part. "We're voting for healing over hate and $1 million over free." Okay, she didn't say that part either, but you get the idea. It was ludicrous. It is unclear whether any further services were provided beyond these two appearances. Once a beloved figure by the majority of Americans for her no-nonsense and impartial approach to broadcasting, Winfrey has trashed her reputation in recent years by becoming a left-wing political activist with no regard for the values she once held dear. And I would argue she's never held those values dear. That she played the emotional heartstrings of people, especially leftists. I mean, she really has only truly appealed to the left, even when she was allegedly apolitical. She's tried her attempts at spiritualism, but it's always been a very anti-Christian approach. You know, is she popular because of her story, because of her whatever? I don't even know why she's popular. I really don't. I can understand why certain people get to that stage. Keanu Reeves is popular because he's Keanu Reeves. I get that. I don't get why Oprah became so popular. I mean, she's got her own network. She's like a mega, ultra mega, huge billionaire. Doesn't make any sense to me, but it is what it is. And now she's $1 million richer, thanks to Team Kamala. George Clooney is also in the news. Poor guy. I mean, this guy, for somebody who is so successful, so attractive, so powerful, you know, he's a real mover and shaker in Hollywood. This dude is just so insecure. He really is. Every off the cuff and especially off the record remarks that he makes behind the scenes, this guy is not, you know, sitting there as this confident alpha male. This dude is so beta. It's not even funny. Even when he's trying to be a tough guy, he's just not. You know, and that's one that surprised me. I will admit, I don't get why Oprah's popular. I understand why Clooney became popular, but perhaps he doesn't deserve it either. According to the article over at thepostmillennial.com, George Clooney claims he's a scapegoat for Kamala loss, stepping back from politics after penning an op-ed to oust Biden. For those who don't remember, you know, he was out there. First, he holds this massive fundraiser, right? Massive fundraiser for Joe Biden. And then, on the urging of Barack Obama, he then came out and wrote an op-ed saying, maybe, you know, Joe's not the guy that he was when I first supported him. I think he should step down. And then, of course, he did. And then Joe did the masterful move of endorsing Kamala Harris, and the rest is history. The one good move that Joe Biden never made in his political career that actually benefited the United States of America was endorsing Kamala Harris for president. Good job, Joe. Or Dr. Jill, I should say. Dr. Jill really did that, but whatever. Clooney, on the other hand, he's being a scapegoat. It's always about him. He's one of those guys. It's always about him. George Clooney, according to the article, George Clooney is being blamed by some for Vice President Kamala Harris's loss to Donald Trump after the Hollywood star, 63, predicted the people would stop Trump from becoming the next president, the Daily Mail reported. Democrats are looking for anyone to blame Harris's loss, and Clooney sees a likely reason. Clooney said he tried to find other alternatives to President Joe Biden after he worked to remove him from the Democrat presidential ticket. George, and this is what a source told the Daily Mail, George feels that the backlash he is getting for Kamala losing is not at all warranted. He thinks it is completely unfair to try and make him a scapegoat for her loss. And to be fair, it is. Okay? It is unfair to him because it's not his fault. It's Kamala's fault. It's Bernie Sanders' fault. It's Joe Biden's fault. It's the entire Democrat Party's fault. I'm talking about Democrat lawmakers. They decided to latch on to the ultra-woke, super far leftist wave that's been coming across America really since Donald Trump took office. You know, shortly after, I guess you could say it really started closer to the end of Obama's second term. But then once, you know, Trump once Trump got in there the first time, that really galvanized the left to go as radical as possible. Okay, and that's Kamala even took on that approach in 2019 and throughout her entire Senate career, and then during her failed presidential run in 2019. I don't think, did she make it into 2020? I don't think she did. I think she actually dropped out before 2020. Whatever. Either way, she went, I was like, oh, look, everybody's going far left. We're going to go farther left. And she did. And it didn't work out for her then. Didn't work out for her now. It's not Clooney's fault. Stop blaming George Clooney, guys. It's your fault. If you are a Democrat who supported all this crap, who wants boys and girls sports, who wants every child to have transgenital mutilation surgery, if you want, Ukraine to be made great again somehow, whatever, it's your fault. You want all these, the illegal aliens to come across, open borders, tanked economy. It's your fault. It's not George Clooney's fault. Stop picking on George. He is back to the Democrat Party and invested so much time and money into them, but he's going to take a step back for now. He feels very disheartened, and I think that's a common theme amongst many Democrats, not just celebrities. I think a lot of Democrats are like, wow, because it wasn't just that they lost. Keep in mind, losing is bad enough. Losing is hard. We've been there, but it's worse to lose in this fashion, to lose in a landslide. I mean, they thought, you've seen these videos. I was going to add some. It's hard. I don't even want to. They're so cringe. These videos, especially on the day before the election, the day of the election, these leftists that were just like so confident. There's this one lady who was going to go get champagne. I mean, she literally went out and got champagne and expressed her how humiliating it was for her to be standing there with what was apparently a clerk at the liquor store, I guess, who was, in her opinion, clearly a Trump supporter. She was embarrassed for him. She felt, oh, you bless your heart, you poor little Trump supporter. You're going to be crying here in a couple of hours. I'm getting my bottle of champagne. This is going to be a wonderful night. These people, I mean, imagine what it must feel like to see that it wasn't just a loss, that it was a bad loss. It was a horrible loss. They can't even sit there and say, well, the popular vote. That's their go-to, right? That was their go-to in 2016. Hillary actually won. She got the most Americans to vote for. It's just this stupid electoral college. Can't say anything now about that because, yes, Trump won the popular vote. Point is this. You want to blame George Clooney. You want to blame Joe Biden. You want to blame Tim Walz. Even if you want to blame Kamala Harris. Doesn't matter who you blame if you're a Democrat. You can't blame any individual. You have to blame the ideology itself because that's what the people voted against. It's not just that we didn't like Kamala, even though we didn't. It's not just that we didn't think Tim Walz was qualified, even though he wasn't. It's not just because Joe Biden had dementia, even though he does. And it's not just because George Clooney didn't do enough. It's all of it. And it really does come down to the fact that the Democrat Party has lurched so far to the left that there's a whole lot of people that are sitting back and saying, whoa, slow down there, troopers. And we'll see if they do. I think they will. I think that common sense might start creeping in a little bit, at least for now. But if I were guessing, I would say that by the time the 2026 midterms come around, that they're going to be lurching to the left again. And by the time the 2028 election comes around, I would be shocked if either their presidential candidate or their vice presidential candidate is a white, straight male. I don't think that's even possible. I think that every straight white male will be pretty much, they'll either be subservient if they're the radical leftist professors or whatever, or they're going to be pushed over to the center or to the right because the Democrat Party is leaving them behind. After Trump was elected president, I received a couple of communications from people. One via phone, well, text, and the other one via Twitter, X, direct message. People asking me, "Hey, now that Trump's back in office, is the economy going to get better?" And I said, "Yeah, in some ways it definitely will. Obviously, I mean, just Trump's presence alone will have a dramatic impact on the economy, and it will take things to the next level." But with that said, the threats still remain. Trump, Harris, didn't matter. They're still pushing, they being the powers that be, are still pushing for central bank digital currencies. They're still pushing for de-dollarization and the rise of BRICS. They're still pushing for the advancement of a worldwide economy. And while Trump will do everything in his power to prevent that, to at least slow it down, some of it is not within even the power of the United States of America itself. And this is why there is no reason, you can see by the gold prices, there is no reason to doubt physical precious metals as a proper way to hedge against what is coming, because it's still coming. You know, there were certain scenarios that would have happened if Kamala Harris had won, and there are certain scenarios that will happen now that President Trump has won, and those scenarios still point in the same exact direction. That's the reason why even central banks are still buying up as much gold and silver as possible. That's why banks, financial institutions are recommending to their people, buy as much gold and silver as possible. I work with a faith-driven gold company. There are a lot of gold companies out there that get recommended by hosts. The one that I like happens to be driven by faith, and they actually do a tremendous job versus the competition. You can check out Genesis Gold Group by going to rumblegold.com. That's rumblegold.com, or read my testimony over at jdrucker.com/gold. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room, the one that I've seen a few people mention it. It's getting talked about on social media, particularly on X and Truth Social and Getter, but it's not getting as much attention as I would have expected. I think the reason why, I know the reason why for a lot of people is because they don't want to get dinged, not on Facebook, not on YouTube, not on Google. It is bad to talk about the potential for voter fraud, stolen elections. That'll get you banned on these places. Well, we're going to talk about it because there's 15, some say 12, some, I don't know what the final numbers were, but over 10 million voters, Democrat voters, apparently disappeared. Trump did better, of course, so that counts for some of it, but where did the rest of them go? Now, to me, the answer is crystal clear. They never existed. There's no way, and I've said this for a long time, there's no way that Joe Biden got 81 million votes in 2020. It didn't happen. There's no way, you cannot convince me that Joe Biden got more black votes than Barack Obama. Didn't happen. Did not happen. But this opens up a door now because we've seen that those votes disappeared. Where did they go? And if they didn't exist, then maybe we should look into this. Maybe now we finally have an opportunity with Trump going back into the White House. Maybe we can expose the massive, widespread voter fraud that took place during the 2020 election, that took place during the 2022 midterm election, and that would have taken place, in my humble opinion, during the 2024 election if it had been closer. I'm going to lay out what I think happened. And I would argue that, I'm going to argue that I'm right. Everything was in place. Okay, they had the ballots getting accumulated through the illegal aliens. They basically replaced some of the other areas where they were getting ballots during the 2020 election. Now they had, oh my gosh, we got this influx of tens of millions of illegal aliens, and it had been demonstrated before the election that approximately 14% of them had registered to vote. That should have been enough to not only put them possibly over the top if it were a closer race, but also get higher than 81 million votes. Kamala Harris should have been able to beat Joe Biden's alleged voting record. But she didn't. She didn't come close. And I would say the reason is because they aborted. They decided whether it was a few days before the election, maybe it was on election day itself, election night. They looked at the numbers. They determined how far they would have to stick out their necks, because every time they engage in voter fraud, they are sticking out their necks. They pushed it right to the edge in 2020. They had to. That was the only way they could win. They started pulling the shenanigans, water main breaks, ballot drops at 3 a.m. Everybody's seen the famous, where all of a sudden Joe's losing, and all of a sudden he jumps up and then he wins, right? Wins. I think that they looked at the numbers, they did the math, and they determined that they would have to stick their necks out way too far in order to steal this particular election. And again, I don't know when it happened. If I had to guess, I would say that it was an on-the-spot decision. That the decision was made on election day. They were holding out. Maybe they told their operatives, okay, be ready, but we might, be ready. Don't go until we say go. Don't drop off the ballots. Don't mess with the voting machines. Don't do any of this stuff. And it's also possible that they took into account that it seems likely, at least in Wisconsin and other places, but for sure in Wisconsin, that voter fraud was discovered before it could be deployed. For those who don't recall, I forgot which. I think it was in Milwaukee. There was a voting center where it was discovered by a voter, by the way, not by like any officials. A voter said, "Hey, that machine looks like the seal has been broken on it," or something like that. And it's like, oh my gosh, look, the seal has been broken on like all 17 voting machines. That's crazy. We're going to have to hand count everything, start over. Nothing to see here. Totally not voter fraud. We don't know what happened. It was human error of some sort. We don't know exactly what happened, but it's definitely not voter fraud. That was, of course, the narrative. So they look at the numbers, they do the math, and they're like, if we're going to steal this one, we're going to have to go hard to the hoop. We're going to have to really and we still might not make it. I mean, Trump is kicking her butt. This isn't even close. Now, again, it's very possible that their internal polling already showed this days, maybe even a week or two before the election. And they're like, you know what? We're going to lose. So let's see what races we can go at. Apparently, and I haven't fact-checked this, but apparently there were five Senate races. And again, I'll double-check this, but 5 Senate races where Trump won, but then the Republican running for Senate lost. Now, that's not uncommon, okay? For whatever reason, I'm a big fan of straight ticket, not because I don't think that you should take the individual into account, but because we want majorities. If you're a Democrat, you want full majorities. You don't want this whole idea. Americans have this in their head that it's like, oh, if we have a Republican senator, then we should have Democrats control the House. They'll balance each other out. There's no balance. That just makes everything stop. Now, I'm a big fan of stopping government, okay? But there are times when you need that balance, not balance between legislative and executive branch. I'm talking about the balance between Democrats and Republicans. Sometimes you have to correct course, and the easiest way to correct course is if you have, a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican White House, or vice versa. So I'm a big fan of straight ticket, but for whatever reason, it is possible that in certain cases that you can see that discrepancy. But let's look at Arizona, for example. Allegedly, for the math to work out, the way that it's currently situated, I think, and I haven't seen it in the last couple of days, or the last time I saw were the numbers that were dropped Saturday, maybe Friday, but I think it was the Saturday numbers. they were showing that allegedly, there were like 300,000 Arizonians who voted for Donald Trump, but also voted for Ruben Gallego. So you're telling me that 300,000 people wanted Trump to be the president, a populist, conservative, America First guy, but then they also voted for the ideologically opposite guy to be their senator. I'm not buying that. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think that between everyone involved in the UniParty Swamp in the state of Arizona, which is right there, you've got Arizona and Pennsylvania. Between the two, you have the two most corrupt election cycle systems in the nation. Okay? I would argue that both of them are red states that are masquerading as purple states because they being the UniParty Swamp, the globalist elite cabal, and the deep state, have been able to take over enough of the voting systems to make them, quote unquote, swing states, right? I think they're both red. I truly believe that. But that's why they're shenanigans. So I would say that Kari Lake probably won by as much of a margin as Trump defeated Kamala Harris in Arizona. But that they are applying their shenanigans of some sort, probably digital shenanigans, I would argue. They're applying their shenanigans and stealing the election from Kari Lake. Now, it's noteworthy, speaking of the other corrupt state of Pennsylvania, it's noteworthy that you've got Chuck Schumer saying that Dave McCormick can't be in the Senate orientation. Everybody's like, oh, he's just being petty. I think that they are still trying, in the process right now, of trying to steal that election. I know it sounds crazy, considering it's already been called, but they're looking at the math. They're seeing, maybe we can manufacture enough votes without getting caught, because that's the key. The question isn't whether or not they can manufacture 1 billion votes, and they could say, oh my gosh, look, Kamala Harris was able to pick up 7 billion extra votes in Alaska. Of course, that would bust them, because that can't happen, obviously. But it could be done. That's the point I'm trying to say. They can manufacture just about as many as they want. The question is whether or not they could get caught. And that's, I think, what's happening in Pennsylvania. They're trying to hold back. Bob Casey isn't conceding the race. John Fetterman's out there saying, wait till every vote is cast. Chuck Schumer's not letting Dave McCormick in. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, I think they might be trying to steal Pennsylvania, just as I believe they have already stolen Arizona for the Senate. Let's take one more break, and then when we get back, let's talk future.
I'm Jonathan Rose, CEO of Genesis Gold Group. As Americans, we work hard every day to provide for our families and ensure their future. But with the uncertainty facing our economy, it is more important than ever to safeguard your wealth and protect your retirement savings. Educated investors look to safe haven assets to shield themselves from the economic storm. Tangible assets like gold and silver can provide stability, security, and most importantly, peace of mind. In 1997, the Taxpayer Relief Act allowed Americans to hold physical precious metals like gold and silver in their IRAs for the first time. Today, Genesis Gold Group helps our clients transfer existing IRAs, 401ks, and other retirement accounts into physical gold and silver, tax and penalty free. With thousands of satisfied clients, 5-star reviews, and fully accredited with the Better Business Bureau, our experienced team is here to help you navigate the process, start to finish. Now is the time to educate yourself on the importance of a diversified portfolio, including tangible assets like gold and silver. Call now to receive our free wealth protection kit and digital dollar defense guide. Call now and we'll include our extremely popular silver prepper bar free when you open your account. Add it to your IRA or have it sent to your home. Call Genesis Gold Group today at 800-200-GOLD. Prepper bar only available through Genesis Gold Group.
All right, so let's talk about the initial selections for Team Trump. We have no cabinet members yet. So far, we've got 3 positions. None of them are officially part of the cabinet, but all 3 of them are extremely important. Let's break those down. But before we do, let's talk about, just briefly, who's not going to be in the Trump administration. Neither neocon Nikki Haley nor deep state Mike Pompeo will be a part of it. It's very funny that Donald Trump came out specifically to say that he's not going to include them in the administration. That's great. That's classic. And then puts my mind at ease, because I was actually concerned about both of them. I thought that chances were good that one or both were going to end up with a role in the administration. Probably not Nikki Haley, because I knew that she was negotiating. Her team was negotiating with the Trump team 2 or 3 weeks before the end of the election cycle, the campaign cycle, 2 or 3 weeks before the election itself. And since she didn't come out to campaign with him, I assumed that meant that maybe she was out. And apparently, that was the case. But Pompeo, on the other hand, there was no talk about him negotiating, his team working with. So I assumed that maybe they'd already come up with something. But that turned out to not be the case. So praise God for that. Now let's talk about who is in. So we got Susie Wiles. Now, I have been critical of Susie Wiles in the past. It's less critical is not even the right word. I've been skeptical, concerned. I thought that she was a very, very strong co-chair of his campaign, but because of her past, and because of conversations I've had with certain people, including attorney Tom Renz, who did a very comprehensive expose against her a few months back, I've been skeptical. But I have since then heard some good things. And I don't think that, to be clear, I don't think that Susie Wiles, and by the way, she was selected as his chief of staff. I don't know if she is, super ultra mega constitutionally conservative or anything like that, but I do know this: she's loyal. And for a chief of staff, you need 2 things. Number one, you need somebody who is extremely competent. And I would argue that Trump did not have competent chiefs of staff throughout his entire first term. Okay, he started off with Reince Priebus, who was basically just a whatever. Trump was inexperienced, so Priebus was not. So it's like, okay, well, I guess we'll get this guy in, and he turned out to be a disaster. Then they had John Kelly, who may be the most treacherous of anybody who was even part of the first Trump administration. This guy, maybe we'll talk about him some other time, but I would rather just forget about him completely and hope that he never makes an appearance in the public ever again. We had Mick Mulvaney in there for a little bit, who was okay. I mean, I guess not awful. And then, of course, Mark Meadows was the final chief of staff, who arguably was the best. I know a lot of people out there don't like him. Look, I had my concerns about Mark Meadows. I actually had lunch with Meadows before he became chief of staff. And I'm not going to go into details, but let's just say that there was potentially a loyalty issue there. I'll just leave it at that. The chief of staff needs to be competent, but the most important thing is that they need to be loyal to the president. Loyalty is important in pretty much every position, cabinet or not, right? I think Trump learned that lesson during the first term. When it comes to the chief of staff, that person, look, chief of staff, which again is not a cabinet position, and yet arguably the most powerful person in the executive branch outside of the president himself. Arguably more powerful as far as how the executive branch operates, how policies are put forth, who gets to even see the president. That's determined by the chief of staff. And having a loyal chief of staff is paramount importance. And that is not really a question mark with Susie Wiles. That's why she got the position. That's why it was a no-brainer for Trump. He didn't even wait. It's like, hey, here's the Ice Maiden. Tried to get her on stage during his victory speech, and she's very shy, apparently. She doesn't want to be on camera or something. I don't know. I don't know her. I really don't. I can only go by what certain people have said. Again, I'd mentioned that Tom Renz, I had him on my show a few months ago. He doesn't trust her. But then I've heard that Steve Bannon, who knows her personally, trusts her explicitly. So we'll see. I'm hopeful. I mean, again, I trust Trump in this regard because he did get burned so badly by his staff in this first term. I think that he's going to go with the people that he trusts. And the fact that he picked her immediately and early and all that stuff, that's a very good sign. I think he probably picked the right person. We will see. Now he's got Representative Elise Stefanik is going to be the UN ambassador. Now look, ambassadorships, generally speaking, most of them are basically cush jobs. Some of them are not. Some of them are dangerous jobs, right? I mean, we've seen that in the past. But the ambassador to the United Nations is an extremely important role. Now, ambassadors, their primary role is to be basically the representative, the mouthpiece. Not so much, I think a lot of people confuse perhaps the State Department and ambassadors, conflate the two. They're not really the same. The ambassador doesn't do a whole lot of negotiating. The ambassador is supposed to be the mouthpiece for the administration to the rest of the world, right? Whether it's obviously to the United Nations, that's to literally the rest of the world. But if it's even for a particular nation, that ambassador is supposed to convey the perspectives of the administration, of the president, right? So in that part, technically speaking, it's sort of an easy job. The tougher part of being an ambassador is being the representative. They're on display, right? They're supposed to be the personification of the United States government, in particular the executive branch, but really they're a representative of the people themselves. So you want somebody who's going to represent us properly, who's going to study hard, know the customs, if they're for a particular nation, preferably know the language, though that's not necessarily a requirement. But when it comes to the ambassador to the United Nations, this person is a highly visible role, very important role, but doesn't necessarily have to be a negotiator. If anything, look, I think that Elise Stefanik is good. I think that she is she's ambitious. She's done a fine job as a congresswoman. Not the most conservative out there, but definitely not the worst. She's not a rhino per se. She's just, she's a New York Republican, just like we have California Republicans out here that aren't really like, it's not like a Utah Republican or an Oklahoma Republican. These are on the coast. When you can get a Republican in there, generally speaking, they might be a little bit less conservative than somebody, say, in Middle America. With that said, I think she's done fine. And in a way, I almost feel like this role is a little bit beneath her. But I don't know what her plans are. I don't know what Trump's plans are for her. Who knows? But either way, I mean, I'll grade that as an A-. Good. And again, with the only minor drawback is that she is a very visible and capable woman who maybe needed a full-blown cabinet position. Who knows? Again, I'm very pleased with that. Now you've got my favorite one, Tom Homan, who I've had on my show. I don't consider him a friend per se because we've only talked twice, but he doesn't. The fact that I've spoken to him twice, I think, is a very good sign, because it's like the guy isn't much of a conversationalist. He's all business, all right? And to be the border czar, I don't know exactly what that's going to entail. He was the acting ICE director in the first term. Is this a step up? I believe it seems like it is, even though it's an unofficial position, really. But sometimes an unofficial position is actually the highest position of power, because it's almost, if Trump's plan, and I believe it is to take Tom Homan and have him as his direct, what's the word for it? I don't want to say executioner, but he's supposed to execute Trump's border plan. And if he's given that power as border czar to be able to guide, oversee, implement plans for ICE, for Customs and Border Protection, for Department of Homeland Security. Like, that's where I would have seen Tom Homan maybe as DHS secretary, right? But no, Trump's got him specifically as border czar. It gives him more leeway, perhaps, less direct oversight. Okay, there's no oversight committee that's monitoring the border czar. So maybe this is a brilliant move. I'm going to rate it as an A. I'll go ahead and make it an A+ because I like the guy so much. If he is empowered to facilitate and to execute upon the deportation plan, there's nobody I would want more than Tom Homan. This guy's a true patriot. He truly believes that this border invasion is an invasion. He believes that this border crisis is a full-blown crisis. And when he was asked by 60 Minutes a few weeks ago, they're like, it's going to cost $88 billion per year to just deport 1 million people, and we're talking about tens of millions. Is that really what the American tax? And Tom's like, what's the price tag on national security? Okay, is there really one? What's the appropriate price tag to make sure that our borders are secure, that our citizens are safe? And then they followed up, what are you going to do? Is there any way to deport people, to deport millions of people without separating families? And his response was amazing. He was like, well, of course, you just deport the whole family. It's great. I love it. I love him. So yeah, let's give that one an A+, just because assuming that as border czar, he's going to have the power of the presidency itself to be able to work with ICE, work with Customs and Border Protection, work with the Department of Homeland Security to make this happen, to streamline the effect. If that's the case, then we might. I don't want to get my hopes up too high, but they're pretty high. I mean, so far, between those 4 moves, not the move number 1, no Haley, no Pompeo. Move number 2, Susie Wiles. Move number 3, Stefanik. Technically, Homan was before, but move number 3, Homan, and then move number 4, Stefanik. That's it's been a good week. It's been a good week. If it wasn't for this whole Thune, Cornyn, Senate Majority Leader thing, I would say it's been a nearly perfect political week. Things are moving in the right direction. Hope is high in the nation. There hasn't been. I would have thought that by now there would have been something massive, major, very similar to the George Floyd riots, but even worse. And we haven't really seen that. We've seen a lot of meltdown videos, which I know some people get a kick out of those. I don't. I just buzz right past them. If it's something that looks kind of interesting, like there's this guy that had like writing on his face. I'm like, let's see what he says. And he didn't say anything. He just started crying. And that was like the entire video. I turned it on. Maybe he said something later. Point is that I hate to jinx it. Not that I believe in such things, but it's been a good week. I mean, it's been a good week. It really has. Man, if we could put a string of these together, maybe we really can make America great again. Happy Veterans Day. If you are a veteran, God bless you. You don't know, and you can't know how passionately humbled I am by you, by your sacrifices in life. And so I am truly grateful. And I think I speak for the audience when I say that we love our veterans. You guys are amazing. Lord willing, I will be back very soon with another episode. But in the meantime, you all stay strong, stay safe, and God bless.
A large retail store just canceled a huge order, leaving us with a ton of extra My Pillows. But you know what? That's their loss. I'm going to make it your gain. For the first time ever, you get standard classic My Pillows for wholesale prices, only $14.88. I can't believe I'm even saying that. Only $14.88. But it gets even better. For a limited time, I'm going to offer my entire classic collection at wholesale prices. Upgrade to a queen size My Pillow for just $18.88. King size only $1 more. Get my body pillows for $29.88 and multi-use My Pillows for only $9.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on the screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of wholesale pricing for the first time ever on TV, including my standard size My Pillow, only $14.88. They've never been offered this low before. We have limited quantities at this price, so